Welcome, everybody. I am Elke Wills, Director of Human Animal Support Services. So glad you're here today for this very special webinar. Um, it's almost springtime. I hope you're enjoying it. It's a beautiful sunny day and hopefully going to be 70 tomorrow in Michigan. So we are doing something a little bit different today. We are going to do a little bit more of a panel conversation, not a webinar presentation. And hopefully you'll get to learn from two very progressive shelters here in our pilot shelters that have been working with HOS for many years. And we are learning how to improve reunification efforts at intake. So first we are going to introduce the team. I'm going to throw it to Ashley since that's who I'm looking at.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Shrewsbury. I am married. My husband actually works here too, and he's worked here for 23 years. Together, we have two teenagers, a 15-year-old son, and a 16-year-old daughter. So please keep us in your thoughts with two teenagers. I live in Shelby, North Carolina, at what we like to refer to as the Shrewsbury Zoo. If it barks or meows, we probably have it. I'm our pet reunification specialist here at Charlotte-Mecklenburg Animal Care and Control. I've been involved with the shelter for about 15 years now through my husband. I started off as a foster and a volunteer, and then I was asked to take a temporary position as a foster coordinator. And just last year, our organization was able to add a pet reunification specialist role. And I felt like that particular role was really just tailor-made for me. So I was very excited when we were able to get that. One of the great things about our organization is that we are given leeway from our management to sort of take a position and make it your own. So with this being a brand new position for us, I've kind of been able to really make it mine and tweak things here and there to perfect it to what we need in our community. Charlotte-Mecklenburg Animal Care and Control serves Mecklenburg County and Charlotte, North Carolina, where we have 1.2 million residents. We are an open intake municipal shelter. For 2024, our intake was 10,599 animals, and we managed to hover around that 90% mark for a live release rate. Given that we are a municipal shelter, we are government ran and operated. So we are also a part of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, and we also have 36 animal control officers who perform calls for service for our community as law enforcement for our shelter. And I am super excited to be meeting with all of you guys today, and I am very excited to see what we can achieve as a whole.
Thanks, Ashley. Gina?
Hi, everyone. My name is Gina Botticello, and I am the Community Partnerships and Programs Manager here at PASCO County Animal Services. PASCO County Animal Services is our county municipal shelter, and I am logging in from the state of Florida. PASCO County is right outside of the Tampa Bay area, so most people know Tampa. We have about 700,000 citizens that reside in our community, and we do about 8,500 intakes per year. I've been here at the shelter since 2015. I actually came here as a vet tech, and I was a supervisor. Now I'm a manager, but pet reunification is a program that falls under my department, and it's something that I'm very, very passionate about as an animal advocate. We want to get those babies back home, and that is the best way to do so. So I'm also very excited to be here today to talk about those concepts.
And I should say as well, before I left San Diego Humane, I was part of the Lost and Found team. And that's why I was giving a shout out to Cam. I don't know if anyone else is on the call here. So I'm very excited to have this conversation to talk more in depth on how we can get pets home faster. So we're going to kick it off with you, Gina. Obviously, lost pets continue to be a driving force for shelter intake. Why do you think that is?
Oh boy, lots of reasons. So lost pets are a major driver of intakes for, again, numerous reasons. Number one, lack of identification. So these animals are coming to the shelter and they don't have licenses, they don't have microchips. It would just be so easy if they did, because then they wouldn't even potentially come into the shelter. I think a lot of people still, they don't have awareness of what a microchip is, and so there's a lot of opportunity there. limited awareness of lost pet resources. If you are a community member, do you even understand, where to find your pet, avenues to take before even, going to a shelter, where your shelter is? And so there's a lot of opportunity for that awareness in every community. Stray hold periods, shelter policies. Stray holds can be really short, and so they have to be for capacity concerns. So does an owner, do they even have the proper time to locate their lost pet in a shelter? Barriers. We're going to talk a lot about barriers today. These barriers are a huge thing as it pertains to return to home programs, but barriers can also be a reason that we're intaking animals and they're staying in our shelters. And we'll go into those in detail. Public perception for return to home programs, a lot of owners can be nervous, very apprehensive to step forward. Again, some more concepts that we'll deep dive into. Housing, one of my favorite, my most passionate things that I like to talk about is breed restrictions. And so animals are coming into shelters. Maybe they're coming in, maybe they're not leaving because of their breeds and if they're welcome in their communities. So basically, we really want to look at all these different facets to determine why animals are coming to our shelter, and most importantly, as it pertains to this discussion, why they may not be leaving the shelter and how we can support them in doing so.
So Gina, not to throw you in if you don't know this, it's okay. Do you track who has ID, the animals that have ID? Do you track that at the shelter?
We try to track everything. Data tells your story. You'll never know where your opportunity lies if you're not tracking your data. We actually have, we use Chameleon as our shelter software, and we have reports that generate every day of animals that do have identification, so that we are repetitiously trying to reach out to those families, and then new stray intakes that do not have identification, that we still nonetheless examining how they came in, where they came in from, to examine opportunities to get them back to their communities.
What's funny is we had this conversation where if we're seeing that such a small number of animals have ID when they come in, is it because they don't have ID, or is it because whoever found them is being proactive in utilizing the ID to get them home, so they're not coming to the shelter? So it's kind of one of those weird things, right? I mean, if most animals aren't coming in with tags, well, hopefully that's because those that have tags are making their way home before they even touch the shelter. But we realize that some folks aren't able to take that approach. Obviously, everyone doesn't know if an animal has a microchip, doesn't know where to get it scanned. And so microchip tend to be a great measurement on how many animals maybe in the community or that you're seeing in the shelter, obviously that you're seeing in the shelter, have microchips. So it's just a great thing to track and go, oh, of the stray pets that came into the shelter this week, this percentage of them had a microchip. And you're often going to see that that's pretty low, which then opens up your eyes to, oh, maybe we should be doing more with microchipping. So just something to think on. So Ashley, talking about microchips, what preventative measures, basic and perhaps more advanced, can community members take to keep pets home?
So again, as an absolute follow-up, microchips, I cannot stress microchips enough. But not just microchips, you also need to make sure, or the community members need to make sure, that the information on those microchips is up to date. So the information you put on that microchip of a 2-month-old kitten is probably not going to be the same information when you have a 16-year-old senior cat. So making sure that you keep that updated is crucial. Another one is register your chip with more than one company. This is a good opening for the disaster that has been Save This Life. That has caused so many headaches and heartaches around here. And I've been able to kind of maneuver around that. And I want to share with you how I've done that. Because if they didn't go to another company from Save This Life, at this point, that chip's a dead end. But I've kind of found a way to go around that. And I really want everyone else to be able to do that as well. So if you know me at all, I keep notebooks full of notes of every single thing that I do. Every phone call I make, every microchip I run, every lost pet, everything I do gets written down in some sort of a notebook. So when I learned that we were losing Save This Life, I decided to go through all of these notebooks and see if I can find a common denominator. As I was searching through, I noticed that the majority of the implant facilities that were Save This Life were done at a local spay and neuter clinic here. So I brought that to my director's attention, and with him, we were able to get a spreadsheet from that spay and neuter clinic with full pet and owner information for all of those Save This Life chips. By doing this one step, I was able to recover 15,749 Save This Life microchips that would otherwise have been a dead end. So this is a way that you can do this without having to dig through 598 notebooks worth of information. So take a sample, take 100 chips that you already have verified on the American Animal Hospital Association, I call it AHA. Go on their website and verify that those chips are indeed with Save This Life. They all typically kind of start with a 991. So take those 100, you already have the info on them, track it down, see what those implant facilities are. Chances are you're going to run into, they're all going to lead. Now, I had some that were here and there, but the vast majority all led straight back to this company, the Spay Neuter Clinic. And another way that you can serve your community and help keep the animals at home is to offer microchip clinics. Here at CMAC, we offer 2 mega clinics per year where we provide annual checkups, rabies vaccines, annual vaccines, and microchips, all for free for our community members. You just have to be a Mecklenburg County resident, and you can get all of those items at absolutely no cost. So one of those, as you were saying earlier, we selectively choose to do a week or two before the 4th of July. So we can ensure that all of those animals that came to that clinic, and typically it is several hundred that we see per clinic, all of those animals are now chipped, and that chip information is current. It was just here 2 weeks ago, and we have that available for the 4th of July when so many animals tend to go missing. Another thing we do to help ensure that pets in our community have registered and up-to-date records, we hold microchip checkpoints. These are super, super, super easy to do. Bring a table, a couple of microchip scanners, some paperwork, and we scan the animal. We fill out the paperwork because a lot of people don't even know what their microchip company is. They definitely don't know what their microchip number is. So we fill that out. We give a copy of that to the citizen, and then we keep the other copy for us, and we input that into our system. So we know that bare minimum, they are in our system and they are done locally. Hopefully the owner will follow up and do it nationally, but we know that that animal is here. Let's see. So doing the microchip clinics and the checkpoints, those kind of give you the opportunity to serve your population with very little financial cost, but a very, very high impact. These are easily ran by volunteers. We hold them at any local event where pets are expected to be in attendance. We set up a microchip checkpoint at Bark at the Park with the Charlotte Knights, Pup Party with the Charlotte Checkers, local pet-related festivals, outdoor pet-friendly events. All of those will set up a little checkpoint, quick, easy, volunteers can do it for you. And there's going to be pets there, and we can get those pets scanned. Another way that we help our community members is with pet identification is a tag machine. So our shelter has a free tag machine where citizens can come in and request a pet ID tag free of charge. At any time that we are open, they can come in and request that. So when we go do these microchip checkpoints, we will tote this tag machine along with us. So if we're scanning these animals and we see, oh no, this animal is not chipped, we don't have someone there that can put in a microchip. So what we do is we will at bare minimum give them an ID tag. So of course, an ID tag is not as good as a microchip, but them having that ID tag is absolutely better than having nothing at all.
And really, I think it's a kind of a new trend, right? Where a lot of shelters are implementing no animal leaves without an ID tag now. So either those that are adopted or those that are being reunified walk out with a tag. And I just want to say, I know it sounds pricey, but truly, when you think about the cost of caring for that pet, and also I think if you're buying them in bulk, they're less than 50 cents a piece. So think about that 50 cents for that one animal versus the care of that animal, and that can easily get home without all the things that come along with an animal having to enter your shelter. Sorry, Ashley, I interrupted you. Did you have
No,
anything?
you're fine. I'm good.
Okay.
I am finished. I'm off that soapbox.
Now, I know I can talk about free microchips and free tags all day long and the
Yes.
benefits that outweigh the cost for you all. So
Absolutely. I have more of that to come.
something
Don't worry.
to consider. Thank you. So Gina, let's talk about those barriers. We hear them talk about removing barriers. So what specific examples have you seen for lost pet reunification?
I feel like the most successful programs in animal shelters are those that are very flexible programs. We see the animal shelters when they're very, very strict on policy. Those are barriers for animals getting back home. And I know this is hard for municipalities. If you're attending this webinar and you are a government agency, it can be tricky to start talking about concepts like removing fees and things like that. But as Elke just said, it's obviously, it's a better investment to waive or reduce a fee versus house an animal that could even be a long timer in your care. So we'll kind of deep dive into those barriers. So the first one is fees. Almost every shelter that I'm aware of, even though Best Friends Animal Society does recommend removing these fees, do have some kind of fee attached to a reclaim. And for many families, this is a financial hardship, and it could stand between them coming to get their fur baby or not. And so even if you cannot remove those fees associated with the reclaim, if the family states it's a hardship, even talking about reducing them. For us here, we will reduce we will waive fees such as boarding and transportation, but things like a rabies vaccine and a microchip, we do keep those in place unless, this family has nothing. So there is some flexibility there. Shelter hours. We have heard of some shelters that are open like Wednesdays and Saturdays for adoptions and reclaim. And so like we were talking about those hold times, is that allowing enough time for a family to locate and reclaim their pet within those emancipation dates? And so shelter hours. Is your shelter hours serving your shelter, or is it serving your community? When are the times that people are most available? We find a lot of pets go missing while people are at work, and they don't even realize the pet is missing, and then they get home from work and the shelter's closed. So we want to really examine all these possibilities to make sure that families have as much accessibility to where their pet could be as possible. Microchip scanning. I feel like we're going to use the word barrier, microchips. There's certain keywords here we're going to use a lot. So microchip scanning. Is the field, is your animal control officers, are they proactive even before bringing the animal into the shelter? Our county, PASCO County, is huge. You can go an hour this way or an hour that way and still be in the same county. So if an officer picks up an animal that is, and drives it an hour away for its home, that's a barrier in itself. It's so much better if that officer can scan the pet and it lives 2 doors down and simply return that fur baby right then and there. And so even the act of coming to the shelter and going through the whole process can be a barrier for some families. Community-based lost and found programs. Does your community have one? I think everybody's on Facebook now, right? Social media is so mainstream. But does your community have a lost and found posting? Do you have a group? Do you have anything like that? It could be a barrier if you don't have one. Some may even consider it's a barrier if you do. They can be a little high maintenance.
They have too many. That's the barrier.
They definitely do a lot of good. And so getting, we go back to, do families even realize where their pets are? And so those social media groups, they're noisy and they can be a lot, but they're really great at removing that barrier of informing the community where pets might be. Some shelters have very rigid reclaim processes, and they may require very formal documentation for a pet owner to get their pet back. They might require records, and they want to see vet records and things like that. And the reality is not all families have these things. And so is it crazy to consider that a picture on a cell phone is proof of ownership? Would anybody on this group, do they consider that? We certainly do. We don't want to be so rigid in our protocols that we're keeping families apart. And so we're very, very innovative when it comes to proof of ownership. And we don't let that be a barrier for us. These are all there. We could probably think of even more and more barriers, but these are all the most commonly associated barriers to return to home programs. And then maybe later down the line, we're going to talk about, what happens even before the animal comes into the shelter. But I'm kind of watching the chat, and but yeah, it seems like those are the most common scenarios. So that's what we face here.
Gina, do you, or Ashley, do you offer transportation back home?
Mm-hmm. We do. It is something I think I have a question later down the line, but we do. If a barrier is transport, we will return the fur baby. If the fees are an issue, or even our hours of operation, we as an agency have really embraced that return home is best. We want to support the human animal bond. We want to make sure the animals are in and out of our shelter as quickly as possible. And we know that these animals, that's where they know their name. That's where their home is. Those are their people. Why should an animal begin again with a family that doesn't know them at all? Let's get them back home. Let's support that human animal bond. So yes, we do. We're very adaptable to these to get them back home.
Making it happen. Just make it happen, right? Yes. So Ashley, I think you talked about this a little bit when you introduced yourself, but can you describe your pet reunification role and what challenges and wins did you see by prioritizing this within the organization?
Absolutely. This is my favorite question. So let's see. I'm not sure how many of you guys are Criminal Minds fans, but I like to think of myself as the Penelope Garcia of CMAC. I'm a pet detective. I do everything in my power to solve the mystery and get those animals back home. I like to think that every pet that comes into our shelter is someone's lost baby, and they are not just a stray. So I'm going to kind of do a brief overview of a day in the life for me. Again, keep in mind, this is what works for me and our community. Do not be afraid to make adjustments for what will work best for your community, and always be flexible and willing to accept change. What works for one case, even for me, does not work for the next case. So first thing, I come in the mornings, I pull all the intakes from the day prior. I look through the medical records. Was there a chip found? Great, we are 15 steps ahead. If not, I dig a little further. Did the animal come from one of our officers? Was it an eviction call? Okay, what was the address? Then I will contact the landlord. Hey, who was this tenant? Anything that I can do to track down a lead of a possible owner, I start looking for immediately. Next thing, I look through all of the intake photos from the day before to familiarize myself with what animals are currently here in the shelter. I check Nextdoor. I check our Ring camera system. So many social media sites. There are so many. Anywhere that I can possibly find leads for the pets that are currently here in our care. So I also really like to take advantage of Petco Love Lost for matches. They use like a facial recognition technology that, to my knowledge, no one else does. So they make my job a lot easier because all of our animals are uploaded into that website. They go ahead and make those matches for me. And it goes from this is the best match to this is the worst match. So that makes things so much easier. They do all the hard work for you, and all you really have to do is just put in pictures of the animals. Another thing that I really like to harp on is do not rely on just a phone call to attempt to make contact with that owner. So what I have done is I set up a Google Voice account that is free, it's easily accessible, and I text the owners as well. I find that I'll call people, they're not going to answer, then I will immediately follow up with a text message, and boom, they respond right back. So there's so much technology at our fingertips right now, and we have to absolutely utilize all of it. Some of the things that I utilize on a daily basis, again, keep in mind, all of this is public information. I do not have anything special. Everything I use can be found with a simple Google search. For example, Tuesday, had a dog come in. He was microchipped. Great. Address and phone number on the chip, both outdated. So I go on truepeoplesearch.com. I look up that owner's first and last name, along with the city and state. I got a hit, but the information on that site was the same information on the microchip, and it was also outdated. So I started to dig deeper. I saw the residents of that address were 4 people, all same last name. 2 of them are in their early 20s, owner's one of them, and 2 of them are in their 50s. So I'm thinking maybe this is a family, husband, wife, 2 children. So I made contact with the owner's sister, the other 20-year-old that was in the house, and was able to obtain a current phone number and address for her brother, the canine's owner. From that, I was able to make contact with the owner and get this dog back home. As far as
So
challenges,
satisfying, right? Like
yes,
just
absolutely. Some of the challenges we have faced, we kind of touched on this earlier. One word, funding. We applied for this position many years ago. Again, we are a municipal shelter, so nothing here is quick or easy. We just received approval for this last summer. So we all face funding challenges in some way or another, especially when you are a municipal shelter. Another challenge that I saw, and this is from me personally, my prior work area when I was a foster coordinator here was in a walkway in our kennels. Yes, I had a desk job in the kennels. Again, funding. There was nowhere else to put me. It's one thing to sit in my comfortable office here in admin now, and it's another thing when on a daily basis, I was seeing those animals go past me that didn't always make it back home. That pushed me even harder to do everything I can to ensure as many of these animals make it back home as I possibly can. Now, happy times. I see wins on a daily basis as a pet reunification specialist. Even if 20 animals came in that day and I was only able to get 5 of them back home, that is 5 animals that made it back safely to their families that may not have been able to make it home otherwise. My favorite part of this job is when I get to call an owner and let them know that their baby is here and is safe. This is a very emotional job and typically causes some sort of tears on the daily basis. Again, we got both challenges and wins going on here. Being able to have a pet reunification specialist helps decrease the length of stay. Any pet I can get back home is one less pet that we have to house, saving money, saving lives. Not only did that animal safely return home, I was also able to open up a kennel for another animal that was lost. There's now a spot for that animal to go into. I am sure most of you guys are struggling just like we are, funding, and we are struggling for any open space that we can get, and it is crucial. So that's a total win-win. Lastly, we've also touched on this helps with our public perception. Our community now sees they are not only out there looking for their lost baby while we house it, we are housing it, and we are also seeking out that owner at the same time.
And I think, Ashley, too, you're helping both, right? Sometimes when finders, if you have programs where finders don't have to bring in the animal to the shelter, you're helping them. And then you're also helping, obviously the family of the pet. So I feel like having a point person or point people to talk to that this is their true focus. It is that customer service and that experience for the community is just, really elevated to another level, especially if they've worked within the shelter system and they've had negative experiences just based on whatever the situation is. This really is typically positive. Now, if you have bad news, oftentimes you're the bearer of bad news. And also I want to, and Josh, don't kill me for saying this, but I don't know if he's on the call or not, but we talked about space, and this is a role that could be remote and or hybrid, because so much of the work you do is here on the
Absolutely.
computer doing research. And yes, sometimes it is helpful when you can go and look at an animal in person, but just something to think about if you're like, oh, this would be, we have no place to put this person. Remote work is possible. I've seen it in action. So let's talk about those others that are also doing pet reunification, the role of the ACOs. We are going to talk a bit more about field services in next month's webinar, but I think it's great for you to hit on how your organization works with field services.
So my husband has worked as an officer here at CMAC for 24 years. He spent almost 20 years out in the field. Now he is on special assignment as our community outreach officer. So I had him come in and assist some with this question for me so that we can have real life answers, not just an answer that looks good on paper, but what actually gets out there and works. So our animal control officers scan every single pet they come across. This means that they have a microchip scanner on their person at all times when they are on duty. Going a step further from just scanning every animal, our officers need to be equipped with the knowledge on what to do after they get that microchip number. Is that microchip already registered? We're also in Chameleon. Is that microchip in our Chameleon software? If not, do they know about the AHA website? How can they find out if the chip is registered? What company that microchip was manufactured with? Our officers are also on our Ring Public Services for CMAC account. So they can log in on the computers in their vans. There is an entire section that is just for lost and found pets, and it shows every single pet that has been reported as lost or found, and specifically where on the map, because again, we have 1.12 million residents. It shows you exactly where on the map this was. Many times our officers, they will pull up Ring, they will look in what jurisdiction they're working that day. They boom, find the post for that animal they just picked up, return it back home. Lastly, our officers utilize the good old-fashioned knock and talk. You pick up a stray animal, you start knocking on doors. Simple as that. Chances are a neighbor is going to know that pet and where that pet lives. Unfortunately, the knock and talk method is sadly becoming a lost art form for our younger generation, we are starting to notice. If you are trying to get your officers on board, again, we know that some of these officers have been here for a very long time. I can speak from firsthand experience, and they can be very stubborn and set in their ways. So go to their roll calls. Before their shifts start, everyone's sitting in there. I make it simple. Hey, if you find a stray, you have no leads, contact me. Send me a picture. Tell me the location. Is it chipped? What's the gender? The officers they'll text me, they will email me, they will call me, and I can start working on finding that owner right then and there. So one of my director's favorite things, again, Josh, to hear is that I was able to find an owner and reroute that officer back from heading to the shelter to bring that animal here as a stray and sending them back to the home and getting that baby returned home before it ever even came into our shelter.
Great. Money saved, time saved, stress saved.
Many
Thanks,
resources
Ashley.
are saved.
Yeah. So Gina, what stigmas, both internally and externally, do you feel need to be addressed regarding lost pet reunification, and how would you suggest doing so?
We were really excited here when we got our first pet reunification coordinator. We were so excited. We thought it was going to be the best thing ever. And we did not realize that our biggest challenge was going to be our internal stigma, because it is a culture change to start attempting to get every animal back home. I think a lot of shelters, an animal comes in, if it's not reclaimed organically, they're moving on to adoption concepts and things like that. When a pet owner is homeless, how does your team feel about giving that animal back? If a family says, I can't pay my reclaim fees because I have no money, how does the team feel about that? And I think that teams are created by a bunch of people who love animals. They come together to work at the animal shelter out of that love. So those apprehensions and fears are real. And so when we thought we were going to start our program and just have this instant success, and instead we had a bunch of staff questioning our own new position out of a place of love, that was something we really had to educate and train through. I think it's really important before any shelter transitions to a robust return to home program, they have to get their entire team on board, and they have to talk about the human animal bond, and they have to talk about all the ways that looks like, and how families are different. And just because someone doesn't live in the suburbs and have all the money for a reclaim, it doesn't mean they love their pet any less. So that was an internal challenge that we were not expecting. And we have to re-educate all the time here to our team, and that includes our volunteers, as to why we return pets to families facing hardship, because that is a family member to them, and we're supporting that bond. So that's ongoing. And then externally, I think that there's a lot of stigma. I think some people know their pets are here at the shelter, but they're afraid. We are essentially an enforcement agency. We're an animal shelter, but we are animal control. A lot of people are afraid to step forward because their dog's not up to date on a rabies. Maybe the dog has fleas. Maybe the dog, just they're concerned that we're the dog catchers and they're going to get a citation, or potentially we're going to judge them as being a bad pet owner because the pet was lost. Maybe they didn't know about it for a couple of days. So stigmas are very, very real. And I think just really the best thing a shelter can do is really buckle in to remove judgments, remove the judgments, and have the conversations. Work through those stigmas through education and training. And that's not going to be a one and done. It's going to be constant. And having the empathy to understand that those judgments come from a place of care. People are concerned, and that's okay. We want our public to be concerned about our community's animals, but we solve that through communication and training.
And there are, if you're wondering like what kind of training, feel free to reach out to us. There are so many places that we can direct you, right, on bias training, the guest relations type of training. There's different places that you can go, and it's just sometimes there's so much coming at you all, where to find the thing. So if you're interested in learning more about staff training, feel free to reach out to us and we can give you some resources there. So now that we're getting close to the end and Q&A time, I'll start with you, Gina, since you just got done. If you were to encourage an organization to implement the one thing that we discussed today, what would it be, and what is step one?
So I think the best pet reunification program starts outside of the shelter. So the field teams for our animal control teams, and Ashley already alluded to it, knocking on doors. I know it's the most dated concept in the world, but flyers. Here's a not dated concept: Ring. Everybody in America now has a little Ring camera. Our agencies watching those Ring posts. What are we doing out there before it gets to here? And again, the further we remove that animal from where it's lost, which is in a very close radius to where it lives, I will promise you that there's statistics that show that, we're creating barriers with, so RTH programs start at home, in the community, in the field. And I think it's essential for sheltering teams to get your animal control teams on board, to try not to do the impound, try not to do the intake, and really engage your community before they call animal control when they see a lost dog. What should they do? We're talking about programs once they hit the shelter, but what I wish everyone knew, the strongest return to home programs start before the shelters even evolve. So community campaigns of what to do when they find a lost pet, some data and statistics showing that they're really close to home. Let's try to just spare them that really scary shelter intake process and barriers to families. So I wish more people knew about that, and I'm hoping that we'll see communities get more community driven in those campaigns to reduce overall intake numbers proactively.
And I wish my team probably doesn't have these at their fingertips either, but we recently had our intake triage project that spoke to what finders are doing and what they would be willing to do. I don't have the numbers at the top of my head, so I apologize, but it was interesting to hear like, this percentage did this, this, and this. This percentage didn't do anything, right? They immediately came to the shelter. And if asked, would they keep the animal longer? It was actually a pretty large percentage. So if anyone's out there in webinar world that knows those numbers, if not, it is part of our intake triage project that I think we've published out there. So it's just really fascinating to talk, like, what do they know, right? Like, what do the community members know what to do when they find a pet? And if you're constantly just reinforcing that messaging, that is doing that community work for you as well. Ashley, do you have any thoughts on that question?
Yep, this will be the final time that I get on this soapbox for you guys, but making microchips easily accessible to everyone, no matter who they are, where they live, what their social status is, whether they are housed, unhoused, microchips need to be easily accessible to everybody. Microchip is the one thing that is reliable. It gives me a starting point of finding that owner instead of starting from literal scratch. If that pet has a microchip, I'm already several steps ahead of getting that animal back than I would be if the animal didn't have a chip in the first place. So what I would recommend for your step one would be you need to find a way to provide free or low cost microchips to your community. You can do that through grant funding, sponsorships, making that a budget item, a partnership with a veterinary organization, donation funds. There are so many different ways that we can make this happen. We have to find a way to give that very incredibly important resource to your community. I did a little research and our cost per microchip is $3. That's it, $3. With that investment of just a few dollars, we save exponentially. If that chip is what it takes to keep or to get that animal back home, we are not paying those boarding fees, those intake costs, the medical care, everything else that is associated with the cost of housing a pet. A microchip costs so much less than all the costs associated with an animal's stay here at our shelter. So with all that money that you can save, then what you can turn around and do, buy more of those microchips, offer those to your community for free or low cost. Run your microchip checkpoints. Again, there's very, very little cost involved in those, if any. And that ensures that those animals are registered locally. These are all very simple things that just take a little time and a little background work.
Yeah, we're on the microchip, soapbox. I feel, really looking at if it's cost $3, and of course we realize, depending on how many you purchase, who you're purchasing them from, but the cost difference really isn't a lot, it might be in the $5 range or less. Looking at it as, like you said, the investment in the community and supporting your staff, supporting the community members, and supporting those pets and getting them home faster. Just really think about that. Like there's collaborations that can be done. You gave so many great examples on how you can make it happen. And that's microchips, I think, and tags as well. So we do have one question. I'm going to give this to Gina, but you can add on to it, Ashley, because it goes to the barriers conversation and the reclaim fee conversation that we were having. So I'm going to read the whole thing. I'm a strong believer in waiving and reducing reclaim fees as much as possible. Wherever I present this mindset, I am met with the same reasons against it. Usually people are concerned the shelter will lose money by not charging fees, but also there's a common belief that people should be penalized when a pet comes in multiple times. Do most advocates for waiving and reducing fees feel that fees should be charged at a certain point when a pet keeps coming back? Then part two, do you have any insight on ways we could help prevent them from coming back repeatedly?
So, yes, we are really asking our community to not bring stray dogs into the shelter. Our dispatch team is trained when someone calls in that they found a lost dog. The dispatch team is trained to start walking them through a community empowered approach. And so we're kind of proactively limiting the number of times we can potentially intake an animal, because hopefully they're never going to come through the doors. We have flyers and social media campaigns of what to do when you find a lost dog. So we're trying to minimize the number of times these animals are coming in. When an animal comes in the first time, you know, sometimes it can not even be at the fault of the pet owner. We hear a lot of landscapers don't lock gates, right? Things happen. It's almost always when the pet owner's away and the animal's left with a caregiver that doesn't know the animal's routine. So we're very forgiving on that first time. And if you would like to be too, one thing that we did is if you calculate how much it costs to house your animal, to feed the animal, clean up after the animal, medicate the animal when it gets sick, because it probably will get an upper respiratory infection, staff labor costs, I promise you, there is no revenue whatsoever in these fees. You will lose money. There's no profitable operation that can be run off of penalizing pet owners. It's much more expensive to keep the animal in your care. So if you do some cost comparisons and present that, it's very short-sighted to just look at what those fees are bringing in versus not the whole picture of what it's costing to house that animal per day. So I think that's some data for an argument that's a little bit more well-rounded. As an animal advocate, if an animal comes in our shelter multiple times, then it's really time to have more of a conversation. If anybody has seen the new recommendations on an animal control truck, it's pretty cool. Maybe there's a fence that is failing and this animal, you know, is getting through this fence. Does an animal control officer or even a volunteer, does somebody need to help them fix the fence? Why? I think it's really proactive conversations with pet owners. Why is this happening? And we actually had the cutest little Shiba Inu that just visited our shelter for the 5th time, the 5th. So I think that return to home conversations are really for families that, you know, it's a one-time offense or even definitely not 5 times. But then it's okay to have those conversations of, you know, it's okay to not empower everyone to get their pet back. I think we all have a responsibility as animal advocates to delve deeper, that there are some families that really are having a hard time securing a pet, and it is possible. I know we want to do everything we can to support the human animal bond. We want to do everything that we can to get that animal back home. With that being said, we do have a commitment to public health and safety in our communities as well. And we don't want any fur baby getting hit by a car either. So I think it's a common sense situation where you're really having developed conversation with pet owners. And if there's an animal that's come in your shelter 3, 4, 5 times, it's okay to not be completely supportive and have a conversation to make sure that pet and that pet owner is set up for success and realistic in what they can provide. That is okay.
And I think too, we experienced this when I was at San Diego Humane, and who should have that conversation. So I think oftentimes it's like, you know, put in the notes, have animal, you know, the ACO talk to this person when they come in. Okay, well, their availability is very limited, right? So having those conversations with specific people can be a challenge. So maybe empowering your staff, whoever is doing the reclaim, to be able to have those conversations. Again, a little more training, a little bit more in-depth conversation, but it's including them in the whole process. And I think that then they understand the why to behind maybe, you know, waiving fees at a certain point to not, and when animals are going back and when they're not going back. So including them in the conversation and giving them the tools where they can just have that dialogue, and then bring in the folks to, you know, if it is a fence fix, if it's a training situation, it's a trial, you know, all the things the reasons why animals are getting out, you know, then bring those folks in, but being able to nip it right there and to continue the conversation. So you're not limiting when the animal can go back, I think is really important too, because you might be like, oh, so-and-so's not available, so come back tomorrow and let's discuss this further. You know, again, lowering the barriers and bringing your whole team along in this journey. Ashley, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I actually experienced this last week. We had a repeat offender. He was a yellow lab that came in all the time as a stray. Either the neighbor called and our officer went and picked him up, or someone picked him up and brought him in. So I noticed that this keeps happening over and over and over again. So I had that conversation with the owner. Why? What is going on? Why is your dog constantly coming back to us? How can we help you? So it turns out the gentleman lived alone and he worked far from home and he was leaving the dog alone 10 hours a day. So he didn't have any way to contain him. So if he let him run around in the house, he became destructive. So he was putting him in the fence that does not work for this lab. The lab goes right under or right over it. So I asked, how can we help you? Do you need an indoor kennel so that you can keep him contained? Thankfully, we have a lot of donations, so we can use those to help. Can I give you a kennel? Can you keep the dog inside in the kennel because he won't tear anything up? No, is that not an option? Okay. Do you need a tie out? Can we help you with a tie out so that you can put the tie out inside of the fence so you have double layer protection of the dog getting out? Along with the tie out, I'm going to assume you probably need sheltering too. So can we get you a tie out and a doghouse? Are you simply unable to keep a collar on a dog? Do you need a different type of harness? How can I help you keep the dog home and it not have to come here in the first place, much less be a constant repeat offender?
And what did he take you up on?
He went for the kennel. He went for an indoor kennel, and knock on some wood, we haven't seen him since. So we're going to hope that worked.
Yeah, we'll have you come back to next month and give us an update. Truly, conversations, we put some resources in the chat here, so everybody please take advantage of those. If you don't find something that you're looking for, you can always reach out to the Haas team as well. We have 4 minutes left. Is there anything that you feel we left out or you wanted to add on to the conversation today, Gina or Ashley?
When we go to the in-office hours, I'm more than happy to have some specific examples of our literature that we use for our community of what to do when you found a lost pet, and some SOPs as it pertains to our TH in the field. We've actually implemented some interesting things. When somebody calls with a confined stray, we actually don't run right out and get it anymore. That was a transition for our community, and so just like Ashley said, happy to share what has worked for us, what is our journey, and if somebody, can find something that they think will work for them. And I'll also try to see if we can get some of the data that we used to show that it's far more expensive to keep the animals in our care versus waive some of those smaller fees.
I think that would be great. Ashley?
Yeah, I know that a pet reunification specialist is not a position that a lot of places have. It is, again, new for us. So by no means I'm an expert, but I do have lots of tips and tricks as to what has worked and what has not worked. So if you do have a pet reunification specialist and you want to compare notes, feel free to reach out. Again, what works for me may not work for you. Same thing, what's working for you may not work for me. So we can kind of share back and forth what does work. And even if you don't have this position, you can use your customer service team and they can use some of these tips and tricks as well to get these animals back home. It doesn't have to be, it's wonderful to have this particular position, but again, most people don't. So if you don't, you can also use this advice with just other staff members if you can't get this position.
Right.